Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we're going to take a look at this path in Act 7.2, quest number 6, the Gwynmaster lane that has physical resistance and flare. Now, this is a bit of an interesting lane because of all the resistances. Now, if you take this lane, the node that you will be removing will activate Power Rush, where the countdown timer to destruction is going to be decreased by 5 seconds. So you're going to have to intercept a lot more frequently, and otherwise you're not going to be dealing as much damage, or in fact the special 2 will deal damage to you. So it's actually going to make the boss fight significantly more challenging. Now, you may have noticed, despite having all the resistances, this lane also has a buff synthesis, where if you have an armor up buff and then activate a precision buff, which you can trigger easily by doing a dex of a basic or a special attack, then you will get a 15-second true strike buff. This will allow you to ignore all the resistances and deal damage as normal. The problem with that is you also have flare on you. While flare is helpful to increase your damage, it also deals 100% of your health over a 60-second period. So you have to finish the fight in 60 seconds if you have no way to regenerate back some health. Now, my rank 4 Archangel here got this fight down with more than 50% health, and when I boosted up, or even with just a better practice run, I actually ended up with 70+% health. The problem with the armor up champions that I tested is even if you were able to access that true strike buff every 15 seconds, so you had it up constantly, you would end up dying before you're able to kill the champion, because the flare node kills you in 60 seconds and they just did not have enough damage output. Another tricky thing about this fight in particular against Havok is if you dex, you will lose your armor up buff, and therefore you will be able to take plasma damage. So that is something you're going to have to be very cautious about in this particular fight. And this fight actually took over 2 minutes to get through. So how did I survive? Well, Warlock has access to healing, and so my strategy was to avoid taking plasma damage and just build up to a special 3 so I could get some healing off of it and put me in a safe place so that the flare node alone would not kill me. Now, if you do take block damage or get clipped, that is going to make it possible for you to die from flare. So you do have to be very cautious and ideally regenerate at least a couple times to put you in a safe place. I also did my best to not dex at all, so I would always have an armor up buff active, but even when it goes down temporarily, because Warlock is able to power drain so frequently against Havok, then he doesn't build his plasma charges that quickly if you continually remove them. So that makes it a little bit more manageable in this fight. And then at one point here, I do end up dexing I think it's a heavy attack, and with that true strike buff, I decide to go all in because we're pretty close to finishing him off. So I go off and throw a special 2, and it does allow us to get the fight down. But that was a very long fight, and it required that I also had access to healing. So from my testing, if you are going to go the route of utilizing the buff synthesis node to get that true strike, you have to have a champion that has frequent access to armor ups and has the ability to regenerate, because none of the champions that I tested, like Angela, like Warlock, like Guardian, like Howard the Duck, Guillotine 2099, none of them were able to get through a fight quick enough to survive the flare node unless they would heal. So you needed a champion that somehow could also heal in order to survive that flare node. Now, how else can you get around all these resistances? Well, some champions in their base kit are able to get around resistances because they have either penetration, they have true strike, whatever it is, they can deal with that more easily. But what I found to work the best for me is to use champions with strong damage over time effects. So Hyperion Special 1 has a pretty good incinerate damage, and if you can stack up Furies and then start to stack up those incinerates, you're actually able to get through a fight quite well. Now, the more challenging fights here are the evade ones, and unfortunately they didn't go so well for me with Nick Fury, but Nick Fury is an amazing champion for this lane because his bleed is just so potent, and if you can stack up multiple of these really potent bleeds, you can get through the fights very quickly. The problem with these evade matches is first you have to get up enough tactical charges and have a Fury to maintain them in order to avoid the evades, which you could do because Nick Fury has the second life when he is awakened. So when Flare kills you, as long as you haven't messed up, you should have time at the end to still have health left with the Fury and then build up your tactical charges. Nick Fury would work amazing for some of the other fights, and here I'm showing this very brief, less than 30-second clip where he takes down Daredevil, and this fight just went so quickly. And you can use Nick Fury for many of the fights on this lane, and if I was to run the path again, I would change up the champions that I used for each fight, and I would use Nick Fury for the Daredevil fight and the Stark Spider-Man fight, as well as the Ronin fight at the end. I would save Archangel and use Archangel for the evade matchups with Nightcrawler and Wasp, because then I can just deal with doing damage during the stun and not have to worry about it so much. So now, because we had so much trouble with Nick Fury, we're gonna actually just heal up our rank 4 Archangel that is unawakened and just do parry heavy for the remainder of for this fight. And Wasp is going to go down very quickly, but then we do make a mistake at the end, unfortunately. But that's what I would say are the best champions, is Archangel and Nick Fury, and then you need a counter for the Havok, which likely will end up being a longer, more tedious fight. So we end up getting a lot of quick damage here with just even 2 neurotoxins, because that flare node is just really amping up the damage over time. And then we get a little greedy here and we try to throw a special 2, but we end up throwing it into the block, and then at the very end of that special she evades and then obviously kills me. So we have to go back in, but we still have a full health Nick Fury left to go, which is nice. Just 1 hit to take him down, and then we're on to the last fight against Ronin, and we're gonna watch this fight go by pretty quickly as well, because the bleeds just do such insane amount of damage. Look at that bleed ticking for 8.7 thousand damage each second, and if we can get a couple bleeds on at the same time, the health bar is just going to melt down so quickly. And that's just why Nick Fury is such an amazing champion for this lane, because the bleed doesn't mind resistances, so the flare node just really amps it up very nicely. But remember, the node that you will remove for the Gwen Master fight will make the fight significantly more challenging, so I do not recommend this for a first clear, even if you have Nick Fury and Archangel, maybe even 2 of each of those, because it makes that countdown timer shorter, which means it's going to be much more difficult to deal damage to Gwen Master with her special 2s, and more likely that you will run out of time and the special 2 will deal damage to you. If you want more information on that fight, check out the Gwen Master guide that I have posted on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I hope to see you in the next video.